Millions of wild boars roam across America, tearing up land, devouring crops, and multiplying faster than any other invasive animal in the country. Yet, despite this huge supply of free meat, almost no one puts wild boar on their dinner table. Why does a nation that loves pork and bacon ignore an animal that seems like an endless food source? The real answer is far stranger than you might expect. Why don't Americans like feral pigs? Wild pigs roam freely across the United States, yet the majority of Americans avoid eating them. This might seem strange because these animals are abundant, often fat, and can provide high-quality meat. But the story of feral pigs in America is complicated. It begins nearly a century ago when Russian boars were introduced in the 1930s. At the time, these pigs were brought in for fat, meat, and breeding purposes. Some were kept on farms, but many escaped into the wild. Once free, they adapted to the American landscape with remarkable success. Today, feral pigs are found in almost every state, but they are particularly concentrated in Texas and California. Despite their availability, Americans rarely hunt them for food. The problem with wild pigs is not just that they exist, it is what they do. These animals are now considered one of the most destructive invasive species in the country. They tear through forests, fields, and farmlands, rooting up soil in search of food. This rooting behavior destroys crops, damages irrigation systems, and leaves land unsuitable for farming.
Of super pigs, and it could become a multi-billion-dollar problem.
Feral pigs eat everything from crops to small wildlife, upsetting the delicate balance of ecosystems. The economic cost of wild pigs is staggering. Every year, farmers, ranchers, and landowners in the United States face losses totaling roughly $2.5 billion. This includes destroyed crops, damaged pastures, soil erosion, and the cost of repairing fences and other property damaged by these aggressive animals. In areas where pigs are most concentrated, entire landscapes are permanently altered. The problem is compounded by their incredible reproductive ability. Female pigs can produce up to 2 litters per year, each with 4 to 12 piglets. This rapid population growth ensures that even the most aggressive culling efforts rarely keep numbers in check. One year, a population might seem under control, only for it to explode again the next. The paradox remains. America is full of feral pigs, and they could provide an abundant, sustainable source of meat. Yet they are mostly ignored, seen as pests rather than food. The challenge is balancing safety, regulation, and practicality. As populations soar, the pressure to find solutions grows, and in states like Texas, drastic measures have become the only way to manage what is one of the most invasive and destructive animals in the nation. Texas's Pig War. Texas is ground zero for America's battle against feral hogs. The state now faces a staggering population, estimated at around 2.6 to 3 million feral hogs. These animals occupy nearly every county and thrive on approximately 79% of Texas's land, making them almost impossible to contain. Their presence has sparked what some experts call a full-scale pig war, with state agencies, researchers, and landowners all scrambling to curb the damage. The reason feral hogs thrive so well in Texas lies in the state's environment. Mild winters, long growing seasons, abundant food sources, and a variety of habitats allow these pigs to reproduce year-round. They are highly adaptable and intelligent, able to find food and shelter in forests, grasslands, and even suburban areas. Their reproductive rate is remarkable. A single female can produce 2 litters per year, with 4 to 12 piglets per litter. Combined with the lack of natural predators, this ensures rapid population recovery even after culling. The economic and environmental impacts of feral hogs in Texas are enormous. Annual agricultural losses are estimated at $52 million, including destroyed crops, trampled pastures, damaged fences, and spoiled livestock feed. Nationwide, damages and control costs rise to over $1.5 billion each year. Beyond money, these pigs cause significant ecological damage. Their rooting behavior erodes soil, damages waterways, and destroys native plant and animal habitats. They prey on ground-nesting birds, small mammals, and reptiles, threatening native species and upsetting ecosystems across the state. In a 2023, a study was published in which researchers used drones to monitor cornfields in Texas. They found that feral pigs destroyed or damaged up to 9.2% of the crop in some fields, leading to yield losses of 3,416 kilograms per hectare, and a financial loss ranging from $17.18 to $48.24 per hectare. Such research underscores why farmers and landowners view feral hogs as more than a nuisance. They are a constant and costly threat. Controlling the population has proven extraordinarily difficult. Traditional hunting, which is allowed year-round on private land with no bag limits, often proves insufficient. Hunters, traps, snares, and even dogs are deployed, but feral hogs are intelligent and wary. They quickly adapt to hunting pressures, becoming nocturnal or avoiding traps altogether. This adaptability makes eradication a persistent challenge. Given these difficulties, Texas has turned to more extreme measures. Aerial control, often called aerial gunning, is used to reach remote or heavily infested areas. Helicopters or fixed-wing aircraft allow wildlife managers to shoot large numbers of hogs efficiently in terrains where ground-based control is impractical. Even so, studies indicate that to stabilize populations, 66 to 70% of feral hogs would need to be removed each year. Current efforts remove only around 29%, leaving numbers on a persistent rise. State agencies are attempting to improve management through coordinated programs. The Texas A&M Natural Resources Institute created the Wild Pig Reporting Tool to collect real-time data from landowners and residents. This tool maps sightings, tracks damage, and guides control efforts, providing one of the few systematic approaches to managing hog populations statewide. Despite all these efforts, the problem is far from solved. Hogs continue to devastate crops, trample pastures, pollute water sources, and compete with native wildlife. Their intelligence, adaptability, and sheer numbers make them one of the most destructive invasive animals in North America. Beyond the visible damage, feral hogs carry diseases that threaten livestock, wildlife, and even humans. These hidden threats contribute to why Americans rarely consider feral hogs as a food source, despite their abundance. Despite this massive financial and environmental destruction, the danger of these animals is overshadowed by a hidden threat they carry inside them, which is the main reason they remain off the dinner plate. The true peril lies just ahead. The hidden health hazard. Wild pigs, also called feral hogs or wild boars, are one of the most dangerous invasive species in the United States, not only for agriculture and ecosystems, but also for human health. Wild pigs are opportunistic omnivores. They eat almost anything they find: crops, small animals, carrion, and even human garbage. This scavenging behavior makes them likely carriers of dangerous pathogens and parasites, which can be transmitted to humans. Unlike domesticated pigs, which are raised in controlled, monitored environments, feral hogs are completely unregulated. There is no way to ensure that the meat is free of disease before it reaches the table. Zoonotic diseases, or illnesses that can pass from animals to humans, are a major concern. Scientific research shows that wild pigs can carry up to 24 different diseases that affect humans. Among the most dangerous are brucellosis, which can cause fever, fatigue, and joint pain, and trichonellosis, a parasitic infection caused by roundworms, leading to severe muscle pain and fever. Feral pigs can also harbor swine influenza viruses, posing risks of flu outbreaks in nearby human populations. Handling the carcass during hunting or field dressing itself can be enough to contract these diseases if proper precautions are not taken. A 2024 review in the journal Wildlife Society Bulletin emphasized that wild pigs are triple threat pests, combining ecological damage with a high risk of zoonotic disease transmission. Bacterial infections are another significant risk. Studies indicate that wild boar meat can carry Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria, all capable of causing serious foodborne illness. Unlike commercially farmed pork, which undergoes strict inspection and monitoring, wild pig meat has no regulated safety oversight. Hunters and processors cannot guarantee the absence of pathogens, even when the meat appears clean or fresh. For people unfamiliar with proper handling techniques, this creates a real danger. Even thorough cooking reduces risk but does not eliminate the potential for contamination during handling. Wildlife disease experts have also noted concerns that wild pigs could serve as reservoirs for prion-related diseases, such as chronic wasting disease, by interacting with infected deer or elk populations. Parasites add another layer of concern. Feral pigs may carry tapeworms, roundworms, and other parasitic organisms. If ingested through undercooked or mishandled meat, these parasites can cause digestive issues, muscle inflammation, and systemic infections. Because wild pigs consume such a wide variety of foods, including decaying animals and contaminated waste, the likelihood of parasite infestation is significantly higher than in farm-raised pork. In a 2021 study in Iran, researchers identified 8 genera of protozoa and numerous helminths in wild boar populations. Research in Mexico similarly found wild pigs carrying parasites capable of infecting humans and domestic animals. Medical and veterinary experts strongly caution against consuming wild pig meat unless it is handled and cooked under strictly controlled conditions. Dr. Susan Schreiner, a wildlife veterinarian with Texas A&M University, notes that the pathogens carried by wild pigs are unpredictable. Even healthy-looking animals may harbor parasites or bacteria that cause severe disease in humans. Epidemiologists emphasize that field dressing without gloves, inhaling dust from internal organs, or eating undercooked meat are common routes for disease transmission. In California, a trichinosis outbreak in humans was traced back to meat from a privately raised boar. This incident shows that even pigs not strictly wild can pose significant threats. Additionally, surveys of hunters in Texas and surrounding states reveal that many have reported minor infections or gastrointestinal illness after improper handling of wild pig carcasses. But if the disease risk is known, why doesn't regulation step in to make wild boar meat safer and more common? Let's find out. Regulatory and commercial limitation. The United States has strict regulatory and commercial limitations that make legal sales of wild boars nearly impossible. In most states, wild pigs are not classified as livestock or typical game. Instead, they are labeled as invasive or pest species, a designation that heavily restricts how they can be handled, processed, and sold. Animals killed in the fields by hunters cannot legally enter the commercial supply chain because inspections must occur before death. The antemortem requirement is designed to prevent contaminated meat from entering the market, but it also severely limits the number of animals that can be processed. The scarcity of inspected slaughter facilities compounds the problem. Between 2017 and 2019, only 17 facilities across 7 states were certified to process feral swine. Over that 3-year period, these establishments processed a total of 242,198 feral pigs, a minuscule fraction compared with the millions living in the wild. Nearly all of that slaughter, about 99%, occurred in just 6 facilities in a single state, Texas. This geographic concentration shows that even when legal infrastructure exists, it is extremely limited and cannot serve the national population of feral pigs. The combination of strict legal definitions, inspection requirements, and limited facilities creates a perfect storm that keeps wild hog meat off the market. Even states with high wild pig populations like California, Florida, and Georgia lack sufficient infrastructure to process animals safely for human consumption. As a result, hunters who cull pigs for population control often have no legal way to sell the meat, and it usually goes unused despite being safe if handled and cooked properly. This regulatory bottleneck also affects restaurants and specialty meat markets. Chefs interested in sourcing wild boar meat face enormous hurdles, from transporting the animals legally to finding an inspected facility willing to process them. Even where such facilities exist, capacity is limited and demand is often local. Unlike cattle, poultry, or hogs raised on farms under USDA inspection, feral pigs cannot be mass-produced or marketed at scale, making them virtually absent from grocery stores and butcher shops. Thus, millions of pounds of potential meat remain unused every year because of legal and structural barriers. And yet, regulatory limitations are only one reason Americans avoid wild pigs. The next layer of concern goes even deeper: cultural perception and grossness. Across many regions in the United States, people view these animals as wild, dirty, and invasive. This cultural perception heavily influences attitudes toward wild pig meat, discouraging many Americans from even considering it as an option for consumption. Even though wild boar meat can be flavorful and, in some cases, superior to domestic pork, the stigma around the animals persists. Studies from other parts of the world consistently show that wild boar meat is palatable and can even be preferred over farmed pork in sensory evaluations. A comprehensive literature review was published, examining consumer attitudes toward wanted wild game meat, including wild hogs and boars, and found that food safety concerns are among the main obstacles to acceptance. Even consumers interested in trying new meats hesitate because of perceived health risks. The review highlighted that knowledge about proper handling and cooking of wild game is limited among the general population, reinforcing reluctance to consume wild hog meat. Lack of familiarity with game meat further compounds the problem. Across multiple studies, participants cited wild game as something foreign or even untrustworthy. Negative associations such as game equals wild, dirty, risky are frequent even among individuals willing to explore unusual culinary experiences. Sensory studies comparing wild boar meat to domestic pork offer an interesting contrast to cultural attitudes. In one study published by MDPI, wild boar meat from female hogs, known as gilts, scored high in overall liking for taste, tenderness, and flavor. Despite these findings, broader focus groups expressed hesitation toward eating wild boar meat. Public perception surveys reinforce this trend. In areas where wild pigs are prevalent, local residents often view them primarily as pests rather than potential food. A 2024 survey conducted in Alabama revealed that a large share of respondents considered wild pigs dangerous or harmful rather than a viable meat source. Many people expressed concern about property damage, environmental harm, and disease, while very few recognized the possibility of using feral pigs as a food resource. Cultural stigma, lack of familiarity, and perceived health risks combine to make Americans highly reluctant to eat wild hog meat, even when it is available and safe. While in other countries, wild boar is a sought-after delicacy, in the US, the mental image of wild pigs as invasive, filthy, and dangerous animals dominates public consciousness. Even hunters who remove wild pigs from the wild often do so for population control rather than consumption. Interestingly, this perception persists despite evidence that wild hog meat can be a sustainable, lean, and nutritious protein source. Nutritional studies indicate that wild boar meat is lower in fat and higher in protein than conventional pork. However, these facts rarely outweigh ingrained cultural biases. The idea of eating an animal perceived as a destructive, disease-carrying pest is unappealing to most Americans. Deep-rooted mental associations of wild equals gross, combined with safety concerns and limited exposure to properly processed wild game, create a barrier that regulation or availability alone cannot overcome. Even in states with booming wild pig populations, the animals are viewed more as a threat to property, livestock, and the environment than as a potential culinary resource. We eat when we find something delicious, isn't it? So the next big reason is taste, texture, and meat quality issues. Odd taste is another significant reason why wild boar meat has not become mainstream in the United States. While wild hogs are abundant, their meat is inherently variable, making it difficult to match the uniformity and predictability of domesticated pork. In specialized farms and processing operations, producers often avoid older males as their meat can develop an unpleasant barnyard taint caused by hormones and diet. This odor, described as sweaty or even manure-like, is widely disliked by consumers and can render the meat unsuitable for sale or consumption. A controlled study noted that wild boars generally have lower carcass weights, higher ultimate pH, and differ in meat color compared to domesticated pigs. These differences can affect not only appearance but also tenderness and cooking behavior. From a nutritional standpoint, wild boar meat shows some advantages. Research found that wild boar often has higher intramuscular fat content and a greater proportion of beneficial omega-3 fatty acids than standard pork. In one study, female boar's meat achieved a mean score of approximately 5.9 on a sensory scale compared to 3.9 for domestic pork. However, these favorable results do not extend uniformly across all wild boars. Meat from male hogs or older animals exhibits much more variability. Depending on diet, activity level, living conditions, and age, meat can vary in texture, tenderness, aroma, and aftertaste. The Environmental Literacy Council highlights that wild hogs feeding on diverse, sometimes unpredictable diets will develop differences in fat distribution, muscle composition, and flavor, making the meat inconsistent. One particularly challenging factor is boar taint, a distinct odor and flavor present in uncastrated males caused by compounds such as androstenone and skatol. This taint can make meat taste unpleasant to many people, described as sweaty, urine-like, or even fecal. Because these compounds are biologically produced and vary with age and hormonal status, meat from male wild hogs often cannot meet consumer taste expectations without special processing. Beyond boar taint, unusual environmental factors also contribute to public hesitation. In parts of Germany and Japan, wild boar meat has shown elevated levels of radioactivity. This is largely due to truffles consumed by the hogs absorbing residual particles from Cold War-era nuclear testing, which then concentrate in the animal's tissues. While these cases are geographically limited, they feed into the perception that wild boar meat is unpredictable and potentially unsafe. In the United States, unexplained anomalies add to the caution. In 2015, hunters discovered a wild hog with strikingly blue fat, sparking fears of contamination from industrial chemicals or dyes. Although no definitive explanation emerged, incidents like this reinforce a broader wariness about consuming meat from animals that live free-range in uncontrolled environments. Even for adventurous consumers or hunters willing to try wild game, the risk of encountering unpleasant flavors, boar taint, or environmental contaminants is significant. Until there is a reliable method to standardize wild boar meat quality, ensuring consistent taste, tenderness, and safety, wild hogs are likely to remain primarily a pest species rather than a regular part of the American diet. Then comes the problem with processing. Why it's hard even when some meat does get processed? Even when wild hogs manage to enter the legal processing system, the challenges don't end there. In fact, this is where some of the biggest problems show up. Unlike domestic pigs raised in controlled environments, wild hogs arrive at slaughter facilities from unpredictable conditions, and this unpredictability follows them right onto the inspection table. One of the biggest challenges is the high condemnation rate. A large number of carcasses simply do not pass federal inspection. According to data reported from 2017 to 2019, a total of 242,198 feral swine were processed at inspected establishments, yet a significant portion of these animals were rejected. Carcasses were commonly condemned due to pneumonia, abscesses or pyemia, injuries, contamination or peritonitis, parasitic infections, septicemia, emaciation, or general poor health. This shows a pattern. Unlike farmed pigs raised in controlled conditions, wild hogs arrive with unpredictable health profiles, and many are unsuitable for human consumption. Even the carcasses that do pass inspection face another problem: inconsistency. Reports tell that this lack of uniformity makes wild hog meat difficult to manage from a quality control standpoint. This predictability makes pork easy to process and market. Wild boar meat, meanwhile, fluctuates from dark to very dark, from lean to extremely lean, and can be noticeably tougher than the tender, fatty pork most American consumers expect. Because of these natural inconsistencies, wild hog meat struggles to become a standardized commercial product. Large-scale processors and distributors generally avoid taking risks on products with unstable quality, especially when rejection rates at slaughter are high. A company can't reliably forecast supply, taste, texture, or consumer acceptability when every animal comes from a different environment and arrives with a different set of issues. This unpredictability directly translates into financial risk. Another important factor is the difference in meat quality compared to domestic pork. Wild hog meat is often darker, leaner, and tougher, traits that may be acceptable for game meat enthusiasts but not for the general US market accustomed to mild-flavored, juicy pork. Even when the meat is safe and nutritionally comparable, it doesn't consistently match consumer expectations, making it harder to market at scale. Do other countries eat wild boar? Wild boar is widely eaten in many countries around the world, and in several regions it is considered a traditional delicacy with centuries of culinary history behind it. While Americans often see wild hogs as pests or dangerous invaders, people in Europe, Asia, and parts of Oceania treat boar meat as a valued ingredient tied to culture, heritage, and local identity. In Europe, for instance, wild boar is so deeply rooted in food traditions that entire festivals are dedicated to it. Italy is one of the best examples. In Tuscany and Umbria, wild boar, known as cinghiale, is a key part of local cuisine. It appears in slow-cooked meat sauces for pasta, red wine stews, rustic roasts, and even cured meats like salami. Italian hunting culture stretches back hundreds of years, and the boar has long been seen as noble game rather than a nuisance. Families pass down recipes through generations, and autumn hunting season is celebrated like a regional holiday. France treats wild boar in a similar way. The meat is often served in high-end restaurants, especially during the hunting season, and traditional dishes like hunter-style boar stew remain popular in the countryside. Even in modern French cuisine, boar retains a cultural prestige that elevates it above everyday meats. Germany also has a strong wild boar tradition. In many rural regions, boar appears in roasts, sausages, and hearty winter meals. Hunting is highly regulated and respected, so consumers trust the quality of wild game. This trust, combined with long-standing food customs, keeps boar meat firmly established in German kitchens. Eastern Europe may embrace wild boar even more than the Western European countries. In Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic, boar is often a centerpiece of holiday gatherings and regional celebrations. It is common to find it smoked, stewed, or turned into flavorful sausages. For some rural families, boar is one of the main sources of red meat. These traditions date back to times when hunting was essential for survival, and the cultural connection has never faded. Asia also has a strong relationship with wild boar, though for different historical and cultural reasons. In Japan, boar is a beloved winter food in mountainous regions. Dishes like botan nabe, a wild boar hot pot, are famous for their rich flavor and are believed to have health benefits. The meat is even compared poetically to peony flowers, which reflects how deeply it is woven into regional identity. South Korea enjoys wild boar as well, especially in grilled barbecue dishes served in countryside restaurants. Many rural communities see the meat as a natural part of their environment and cuisine. In China, wild boar is eaten in certain forested regions, often in soups, stews, and roasted dishes. Traditional Chinese medicine sometimes promotes it for vitality and strength, so it holds a cultural significance that goes beyond flavor. In the Mediterranean region, attitudes vary depending on religion and tradition. Spain and Portugal consume wild boar regularly, particularly in rustic hunter-style dishes. Meanwhile, in many Middle Eastern countries, boar meat is avoided because pork is religiously forbidden. But within Christian communities in countries like Lebanon or Armenia, boar may still be hunted and eaten occasionally. Beyond Europe and Asia, wild boar consumption exists in other parts of the world too. In Australia, feral pigs are invasive, similar to the US, but hunters in some regions do eat the meat, and inspected boar meat is sometimes exported. In New Zealand, pig hunting is a well-known national hobby, and wild boar meat is often smoked, grilled, or turned into sausages shared within local communities. Some African regions also consume wild game, including warthog and boar, especially in safari areas where hunting traditions remain alive. South American countries like Argentina and Chile have smaller pockets of wild boar consumption, usually in rural families with European heritage. All of this illustrates a simple truth. Many countries eat wild boar proudly, comfortably, and traditionally. While Americans may hesitate due to safety concerns, negative perceptions, or unfamiliarity, the rest of the world has embraced wild boar as a flavorful, nutritious, and culturally meaningful food. Whether the US will ever adopt a similar attitude remains uncertain, but globally, boar remains a cherished part of the human culinary story. Will Americans ever accept wild boar on their plates? It's possible, but several things would need to change. First, there would have to be a shift in perception. Instead of seeing wild hogs as monsters tearing up farmland, people would need to see them as a free-range, naturally fed source of sustainable protein. Some small businesses and high-end restaurants are already promoting wild boar as an eco-friendly alternative to industrial pork. If this message spreads, it could reshape attitudes over time. Second, the infrastructure would have to improve. Right now, the unpredictability of wild hog meat in flavor, safety, and quality makes large-scale commercialization challenging. Without consistent supply and reliable processing systems, it's difficult to normalize the product for everyday consumers. Finally, environmental and economic pressures might drive change. As wild hog populations continue to grow, causing billions of dollars in agricultural damage each year, policymakers and consumers may eventually see value in turning a pest into a resource. If marketed as sustainable, ethical, and flavorful, wild boar meat could slowly make its way into mainstream American diets, much like how sushi, octopus, or goat meat gradually entered the US food culture. In the end, acceptance is not impossible, it's simply culturally delayed. Many Americans may still hesitate today, but with changing tastes, rising interest in wild and organic foods, and growing awareness of invasive species management, wild boar meat could one day shift from pest to plate. For now, however, it remains a niche choice in a country not yet ready to embrace it the way much of the world already has. What about you? Would you ever try wild boar meat if it were safe and properly prepared? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what side of this global debate you stand on.